Okay. I want us to finish up this section so that we can have enough time for all the questions. So this section that talks about summary of proposal in other regions, I'll call on Ernest to come and present this section so that we can then enter into all the questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I was next. Usually we ask the staff of the other registries who are here to share with us what is interesting that is being discussed in their regions. However, this time I noticed that there were not that many staff, so I chose to capture the information from their websites myself. So the other RIR staff who are here, I'm going to present to share with our community here what is interesting that is being discussed in your regions. If you feel it has been inaccurately reported, please feel free to come and correct me, okay? And if you feel there's still more information you want to share, feel free. So we start with AREN. AREN have an out-of-region IPv4 address use proposal. It attempts to clearly state to what extent IPv4 addresses can be used outside of the AREN service region. The AREN service region is North America and Canada, well, USA and Canada, and they are trying to define a set of guidelines as to how much space, how much IPv4 space can be used outside of the US by their members. Now this, why I pointed it out in particular is because a similar discussion has actually popped up on our list, which I just shared a few minutes back. The other one, remove minimum size of IPv4 prefix that can be transferred. Okay, as you're aware, the ARIN, the American Registry for Internet Numbers, again, that's the registry that serves the US and Canada, they have a policy that allows transfers of IPv4 address space between them and any other region that has an equivalent policy for receiving the address space and vice versa. So there are some minimum sizes that are set in the policy for transfers regarding how much space, regarding the minimum size of IPv4 space that can be transferred. And I think this policy is attempting to remove those minimum blocks, the minimum sizes. So instead of, the policy currently sets the minimum allowed block size to be transferred to /24. Yeah, that's what's happening. So yes, they're attempting to set a minimum size that can be transferred, right? Yes, thanks, Bear. Yes, the policy is attempting to remove that minimum. Yes, thanks. Just for your information, a similar proposal, not for setting minimums, but for IPv4 address transfers, was presented to us in Lusaka, and that proposal was met with rejection right away. And FYI, that proposal actually came from a person that represents an American organization. So I believe they wanted to be able to have transfers between Afrinic and ARIN. The other proposal that could be of interest, improved registry accuracy. Improved registry accuracy. So the proposal aims at defining the services that are offered to legacy resource holders in the ARIN region. These could be services like RPKI and corporate name changes. So these are services that are supposed to be given to contracted legacy resource holders. Now, ARIN has a concept of the legacy registration services agreement. So some of their legacy resource holders actually have agreements with them, and I think this proposal is aiming at stating clearly what services these organizations can receive. And of course, one of the motivations here is to make sure that data, who is data for these organizations is actually kept as accurate as possible. That is why perhaps it is titled Improved Registry Accuracy. We also have many legacy organizations. Many of these were inherited from the American Registry for Internet Numbers, and I believe that something like this could also be of benefit to our region. allowing inter-RIR ASN transfers. In the AREN region, they are discussing the possibility of allowing AS numbers to be transferred between EPINIC and AREN, because EPINIC in particular already has a policy in place to allow AS numbers to be transferred between EPINIC and any other region that has a similar policy for receiving or sending out AS numbers to another region. I think some of the discussions around this proposal were about the actual motivation behind why there is a need to transfer AS numbers between regional internet registries, because apparently AS numbers are not yet scarce. And this was one of the key questions that was being asked, why this proposal is needed in the first place. Change utilization requirement for IPv4 space from last allocation usage to total aggregate. Now, the purpose of this proposal, utilization requirements for subsequent requests, for subsequent IPv4 requests, is calculated on a per allocation basis. And this is exactly the practice that is in the AREN region. And the proposer is looking at a way to have utilization measured on the total number of allocations that a member has, instead of the most recent allocation. I think details on this can be seen in the proposal itself. If you want more information, please read through it. In the EPINIC region, there is currently no policy under discussion. If there's anybody from EPINIC here who thinks this is not accurate, please do let us know. All right, we picked the interesting ones. Abandoning the minimum IPv4 allocation size. So they are trying to remove the restriction on the minimum size of IPv4 allocations and sub-allocations. We still have minimum sizes in our region, and the community might think that if this is necessary, go through the PDP and propose something. Allow IPv4 PI address transfers. So the current policy for transferring IPv4 addresses in the RIPE region does not cater for PI transfers. PI space is provider independent space that is given to organizations that are not ISPs. And in the RIPE region, they would like to remove this restriction, mainly for the purposes of having accurate information in the WHOIS database, because as it happens, people with PI space are actually transferring it to other organizations, but there is no way for them to reflect this in the RIPE database. So one of the motivations here again is to have their WHOIS data as accurate as possible. The other proposal that is interesting in the RIPE region is to remove the multi-homing requirement for receiving an AS number. And the requirement to get an AS number in the RIPE region is that a network must be multi-homed, or perhaps planned to be multi-homed. And the current policy assumes that ASs and their peerings are globally visible and that they are multi-homed with at least 2 others. However, there are situations when one requires a globally unique ASN, and one or both of these assumptions are incorrect. So we have pretty much the same policy and requirement to receive an AS number in our region. And as a matter of fact, we've also received similar complaints from some of our members when they've been requesting AS numbers. So if you feel this is something we should also adopt, feel free again to raise this up and go through the PDP to propose a change to the current policy for managing and distributing AS numbers. Remove the IPv6 requirement to receive IPv4 space from the final /8. So in the RIPE region, in order for a company to receive IPv4 space from their final /8, RIPE right now, they are issuing space from their final /8, okay? So to receive space from that block, you need to have an IPv6 allocation. Ingrid, do you mind if
sure.
You can comment right after? Yeah. Please do come and correct this. So I will leave that to you. I will not go ahead with it, okay? You will talk about it. So our understanding of the proposal is that they are trying to relax this requirement, but Ingrid will give more information right after. Yeah. Inter-area address transfers. The policy creates a framework to transfer IPv4 addresses from one RIPE NCC member to another member in another region and vice versa. I believe they have, this proposal has been in their region for a while, but has actually never been implemented. Again, Ingrid, you feel free to comment on that right during the break, during the question time. This is what we could capture from LACNIC, which is the registry that serves Latin America. One of their proposals, creating an IPv4 reserve block for IPv6 deployment. So there is a proposal in their region that attempts to get LACNIC to reserve a contiguous IPv4 address block that would be used exclusively by members who justify the need for IPv4 addresses for immediate deployment of IPv6. I believe one of the reasons why this is being proposed in the LACNIC region is because, as mentioned earlier in the morning, they are right now issuing space from their last block. They are right now on a /9. That's how the reasons this popped up. They are also having a proposal around the management of returned resources, and they are trying to create a policy for managing resources that are returned to LACNIC members, returned from LACNIC members, or the national internet, or to the back to LACNIC or to the national internet registries. In the Latin American region, they have what are called national internet registries. We do not have it in our region. This is just a point of information. They are also discussing a proposal regarding inter-regional address transfers, and that's IPv4. And this proposal also allows transfers of address space, IPv4 space, between the RIRs that have similar proposals and companies in the LACNIC region. So that is it for now. This is what we could share from what is happening in the other regions. I hope that some of the points here will be of interest to our members. I believe some of you, from your interaction with AFRINIC, some of these might have been pertinent to you, and if you feel they have, we have the policy development process right here. Feel free to raise them up, talk about them, maybe see if you can craft policies that can address some of these problems, just like the way the other registries are doing. Thank you very much. Sean?
Okay, thank you, Ernest. So that's it. That's all the presentations we needed to do for this session. So now we could ask, we could come to the floor to make our comments or ask questions.
Andrew Alston here, Liquid Telecoms. I've got two quick questions. Firstly, on the Aaron change utilization proposal, which seeks to calculate the utilization as an aggregate rather than the individual blocks assigned, can AFRINIC qualify what their current method of doing this is? Is it based on the aggregate, or is it based on the individual blocks assigned? I'm not actually sure what the situation is. And then the second question that was asked by Ben and I after we were told we were looking confused is, can we please get a definition of what offshore company actually means in the context of what was presented earlier? Because it is my opinion that to say that you should deny offshore requests because they're most likely to be fraudulent is extremely prejudicial and would be equivalent to saying, well, because the rumors out there are that most spam originates from Nigeria, let's block Nigeria from the internet. That would be completely bizarre. So firstly, I'd like to know exactly what offshore company is and how that even makes sense. And if offshore company means an island, are we going to deny all allocations requests from Mauritius?
Go ahead, please.
Bill Woodcock, Packet Clearinghouse, and Aaron. Two related questions related to issue number 5 from the mailing list discussion about the labeling of prefixes in the who is with country codes. So question number 1 is when an allocation has been made and has been subsequently subnetted by the recipient, and different subnets are in use in different African countries, should the subnets, the suballocations, be registered in the whois, or do you have a our whois mechanism or something like that that would allow the delegations to be registered in different countries? Second related question is, when the purpose of the prefix is anycast, as for a CCTLD name server, and that prefix is being used Africa-wide, so in the same prefix with the same subnet is being advertised in many different countries, how would you like to see that indicated? Thank you.
Hi. I want to come back to one policy about according the IP address by number of students. We found this policy very...
Sorry, could you mention your name, please? Your name. Your name and your affiliation.
Arnaud Amelina, Togorer. Okay, donc we found this policy very marginal and disloyal because it had been adopted by a majority at Zambia, while it accorded by minority at Zambia, while the majority rejected on the mailing list. So why this discussion is coming back here again? Thank you.
Thank you. This is Douglas again. I'm returning again to seek some more clarity on the whois policy. Our process allows for any policy that has been in existence for at least 4 weeks to be up for discussion. It is my recollection that I think the whois policy meets this requirement. It's been around for at least 4 weeks. That means it should be up for discussion. Chair, you said you can't draw consensus on this, and I don't see why. I think there should be a procedure issue here, and we would like to address it before we move on. Just for purpose of clarity, I'm not in support, or I'm not on either sides of this policy. This is for another time. We'll discuss it later, but for now, the procedure issue.
Okay, thank you. Adia?
Yeah, I think because before this become a huge polemic, I think instead of offshore, the wording is shelf company.
All right, also, just to mention here, all the issues we stated are not policies, right? They are not proposals. They are just issues that were discussed on the mailing list, which actually we expect that some of those issues will have been, some of the things that you were saying now will have also been said on the mailing list. So if those who made those discussions on the mailing list are also here, perhaps they could also provide their responses. So just to mention that it's not a policy proposal, it's just an issue, just different issues that we observe that were discussed on the mailing list. So I'll ask Ernest to respond to some of the questions, and I'll also attempt to respond to some of them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Yeah, I'll start by answering the question from Andrew about how we calculate the utilization on wire handling requests for subsequent allocations. Do we use the total aggregate method, or do we look at the most recent allocation to the member? Right now, we actually use the method of the most recent allocation. We don't do the aggregate. We use the most recent allocation. The policy, yes, I do understand, says 80% utilization, although internally we've been mainly looking at the method of the most recent allocation. Of course, that's assuming that before you got your subsequent allocation, the previous one also met the same requirement. So that's the method at the moment. However, I see you beg to disagree a little bit. I'll go ahead and answer your second question before you speak. The offshore definition of offshore, what are offshore companies? I think Adiel clarified on that, but I would like to point out again that you directed the question to, it seems, to Afrinic, and what we did here was reporting what appeared on the mailing list. So the poster at the time stated offshore. The poster did not clarify what offshore is. Perhaps it would have been nice if you asked them on the mailing list to perhaps explain more what they mean by offshore. This did not come from us, it came from the community. We're just reporting it. Thank you.
Just a quick question about using the lost allocation. Does that not open a huge potential for abuse? And I say this because if I've got 4 or 5 blocks and I transfer everything from block number 1 to block number 5 being the most recent allocation, I then apply for more space. You are seeing block 5 as fully allocated in my Afrinic. I am then getting more space. I then take block 2, transfer everything into the new block, and go again. Meanwhile, all the subsequent blocks are being freed up as I go, creating more and more and more free space. Is this not really, really dangerous?
Madhvi is right behind you, so let her just comment on that. Sorry, Alan. Madhvi, please. It's okay.
Okay. All right. When the hostmasters look at a company, a member's request for additional resources, we look at the resources that the member holds. Okay. What happens is the member gets resources initially and then come back for another block. The process is we look at the utilization. Is it 80%? Because the policy says they can come back for more address space if they have reached 80% usage. So we validate that, okay? So it gives confidence that they are using, okay? We validate, we can issue another block. In case of transfers, that happens, transfers have picked up. When we look at the utilization, we will know that the blocks are being transferred. We have a history of the movement of IP addresses for each members in any case. The member portal, even for the member, if a contact for a member has changed, for example, when we give the new contact the login credentials to the member portal, they will have an overview of all the resources that the organization holds. So what they view is what we see as well. And at any point in time, yes, we do base ourselves sometimes on the most recent utilized allocation because the members can have only one recent allocation, okay? But when they have more, nothing stops us from running a check on all the assignments. We can double check, we can go and verify that these IP addresses are in use. Yes, it is done as per the process.
Okay.
No. When it would depend, like I said, it would depend on the request. If the member has only one recent allocation, we will look at the most recent one. If it has more than one, and looking at the date the resources have been issued, usually we know that what was the process of evaluation before, what was given to us before. Okay? Moving forward, we have the member portal that's coming, but overall, that will also give the member an overall view of what is the percentage of the resources that are in use by them. Based on the registration, it will give an overall percentage of that as well. Because it happens that there's another clause of the policy where they can get more resources if what they have as available cannot meet the needs. So that may not, the utilization may not be 80%. So when they come back for more, we will have to do the calculation and see if in effect 80% is being used or not overall. Does that answer your question, Andrew?
Just to clarify, Madhvi, maybe if could help if you could explain to Andrew, if in actual sense, do we look at the entire aggregate of all the allocations used at the moment, or do we look at the most, assuming an ISP has 6 allocations and they're getting a 7th. So do we look at the most recent, or do we look at the utilization of all the previous 6 allocations to make sure that the 80% requirement is met? Maybe if that could be clarified to Andrew, that could be. I just want to point out though to Andrew that either way, there's no policy breach. But again, at the practice, perhaps Madhvi could explain it. Just to be clear.
We do have a visual where, you know, the percentage utilization of the blocks is being done, and we do look at them. Said, if we have 20% of one block and 80% of the remaining blocks, we'll look at the size, you know. 20% of what? Is it a /12 or is it a /22? And if we really do the average, would it still be 80% of the whole? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madhvi. Before you go ahead with your question, I'd like to answer some of the questions that were raised before by Bill Woodcock. Bill, let me see. Bill talked about the country attribute, and in particular mentioned the ENICAST proposal, the ENICAST assignments, and wondered what country attributes would be indicated in the WHOIS registration for ENICAST assignments. Just to point this out, Bill, that we actually do not have, in fact, up until now, we do not have officially a policy for ENICAST assignments. There's one that was, yes, yeah. Yeah, yes, I was coming to that. Yeah, a proposal came up for us handing out ENICAST assignments, and I think what you mentioned would have been an interesting observation to include in that proposal. It's not yet implemented. It was ratified, it's not yet implemented, and yeah, I would like to actually leave it out to community members to perhaps comment more on Bill's observation of which country attribute will be indicated there, because an ENICAST assignment, an ENICAST prefix can be originated from, visible from many countries. So what is the appropriate country code to indicate in the WHOIS registration of an ENICAST assignment? So this perhaps the author of the ENICAST assignment policy might want to reconsider, maybe put a revision to that and see if this is made in the proposal. Bill again asked about customer assignments and sub-allocations. Where do we register these? We register these in the WHOIS database. There are special attributes to identify them in the WHOIS database, and these are registered. We recommend that they are registered with the country attribute of the network, the network of the customer, where it is located. So usually the ISP or the LIR does this. We don't do it as AFRINIC. So we hand out a block to the ISP, to the LIR, and the ISP is required by policy to register blocks of IPv4 address space that they issue to their customers, and it is our expectation that they will register these blocks as accurately as possible to reflect the country where the customer's network is located. Well, I heard your question. Do we have a mechanism to sweep those? Sweep, yeah, you mean register, right? We have an interface. We have an interface, or there are two ways this can be done. We have a portal, MyAfrinic, where our members can do this from, or they can submit these things directly by email through templates. Yeah, there are many ways to do this. Yeah. Yes, so Sean, perhaps you have to comment on the other two questions before, before the other questions are taken.
One of the questions was, why are we discussing a policy that passed last call? I mean, a policy that made it to last call, rather, not past last call. The reason why we are discussing this is because it did not pass last call, right? So at, when we observe consensus, when it was, when we got a consensus to take it to last call, during the last call discussion, we observed that it was not, the level of discussion that we observed during the last call period did not warrant, did not indicate that there was some certain level of agreement on some of the issues that the policy was trying to address. And that is why it did not pass last call. And once a policy does not pass last call, what we normally do is that we send it back to the mailing list for further discussion. And it's then categorized as a policy under discussion. And that is why we are discussing it right here in this meeting. I hope that that answers your question. The question from Douglas is about, okay, so the WUIS, I think we should clarify something. There was a WUIS proposal that was withdrawn, which that is a clear one, which perhaps later when we're discussing this new WUIS update process, we are going to ask staff to provide us perhaps some updates on some of the work they said they will be doing or they have done on WUIS, on their database. This one just came in not long ago. To be specific, it was published on the 15th. So if we do the math, we would see that it's not yet 4 weeks of discussion. However, I don't know how Douglas is doing the calculation, but we ought to have 4 weeks of discussion of that policy before we can, yeah, that's just what the process is, right? So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Lohan from Cloud Innovation. Just a quick question regarding the offshore company. According to the presentation slides, offshore company often carries a higher fraud rate and possible being more illegitimate than the on-site companies. So my question would be, does Afrinic carrying a different evaluation procedure for offshore companies that make the higher fraud rate? Because if Afrinic doing the exact same job for the on-site company or offshore company, whatever company come to the Afrinic, it shouldn't be any difference in terms of fraud rate because Afrinic should minimize it in any circumstance anyway. It's just saying like certain group of people in society actually carry a higher crime rate without any statistics. Would you mind to provide some statistics on offshore company application you received and was proven to be fraud, and compared to your statistic with the current on-site company which the application you received and proven to be fraud? What's the percentage comparison there? Do you have real data on this?
Yeah, Owen, please.
Owen DeLong, Hurricane Electric, Aaron AC. I wanted to clarify that the Aaron proposal for changing the IPv4 requirements is not about analyzing just the last block. It's about the subtle difference between analyzing the utilization percentage of individual blocks and determining whether somebody has utilized 80% based on their individual block utilization versus whether they've used 80% of the total aggregate space. And this proposal seeks to base the utilization on the total aggregate space rather than the individual blocks. It's not a fraud issue, it's a how hard is it to get new space versus efficiency issue.
Okay, thank you. Nishal, please.
Hello, my name is Nishal. I have two comments. Firstly, I have to admit I don't read RPD as often as I should. So I was really curious as to why the Anycast policy wasn't put in effect. So I went back to the archives and I'm trying to find, and I'm still trying to find the message that indicates that it's there. I'm also quite blind, so I can't find it. I was hoping someone could point me to it, perhaps. But to save time, maybe it might just be easier if there was a recap of why it didn't go through, just for the people like me that don't read it every day. And here's my concern. My concern is if there was a problem with getting the efficient resources or the right resources to get this in place, then I saw a whole lot of other stuff on the slides about accuracy and who is and other good stuff, really. My concern is that there could be additional possible delays in getting a lot of those things out as well. And I would wanted to know, for example, how many people are being committed to this kind of stuff. So those are statistics I think you might provide tomorrow, I'm not certain. The second thing was also actually an answer to the AnyCast policy. There are at least 2 AnyCast allocations that have been made to Afrinic who are using it for AnyCast purposes themselves. Those are registered in Mauritius, and the reason it was done at the time was that's where the legal entity was. So those of you that are planning AnyCast policies or planning on registering stuff, I can tell you that from a previous life, that is at least how one organization did it. I think the ZACR, Mark was here and I pushed him away, also have an AnyCast allocation, and they register that as South Africa. But I'd really like an answer on the delay for the AnyCast thing. Thank you.
Okay. Nishal, thank you for that comment and welcome to the new life. As a previous life, which was good. Just a quicker, so from the co-chair point of view, we received the request, the approval to extend the implementation period. And one of the things that actually I want to note that one of the things that we'll be discussing later today is actually to review what range, what timeline should we be setting for implementation? What period should we be setting for implementation? Should it be before? Should it continue to be after last call or after ratification by board? Because some of the things that delays implementation in our interaction with staff is that board delays ratification. And if board delays ratification, then it means that the staff will have some minute time to implement. So these are the things that we'll be discussing at the other meeting, at the other session. And I already see someone is standing up for that. However, I'm going to ask Ernest to respond on the reason why there was a need for extension. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I'll first answer the question from, what's his name? Lou, regarding his concern about the offshore fraud rates. And again, I would like to point out that we are not reporting necessarily that there is fraud rates from offshore organizations. So this, I'd like to make this clear. What we presented up there is what was discussed on the list. And perhaps we presented it verbatim, okay? There was a concern that Afrinic should perhaps apply greater scrutiny to requests from offshore organizations because of the perceived perception that there could be fraud from them to take these addresses out of the region. And the person who posted that even went ahead to say that in the past, it seems Afrinic issued a huge block, I think he mentioned /over/13, to somebody who is registered offshore that appears to be using it out of region, okay? So this was just a report of what appeared on the list. It's not a report from Afrinic. We're just sharing with you what was posted on the list, what was discussed, to get your reviews, your feedback, and your feelings on that, okay? So that's what I would like to point out to you. It's not Afrinic reporting that we've seen fraud. We're reporting what has been mentioned. And secondly, you asked for statistics on regarding fraud, offshore companies that have perhaps been fraudulent in our mind. And this information we did not, well, we can prepare it if there is, if it's there, we can prepare that and share it. But at the moment, we don't have this sort of statistics.
Okay. According to my understanding, everybody have better English than I do, but according to my understanding to the slides, that you're actually making a statement that all offshore company actually having the fraud rate, higher fraud rate, and that is a reasoning to deny all the offshore company resource requests. That was from my personal understanding of the slides. If that's not the case, correct me, of course. But if that is a statement to be made, of course, it needs to be backed by statistics, which from your registration service. And if that is a statement being made, I would appreciate if you can publish this statistic to back up your statement. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. But let me make a comment. This is the first time we are actually trying to provide a summary of the mailing list this way we have done. It's a trial, and it looks like it's good and bad at the same time. Please, again, take note that these comments were just verbatim. We just tried to hope that we could generate some discussions from these comments. And some of the questions would have been better if the person that made the comment is here in this room to respond. Just like the one that you just mentioned now, it would have been better if the person, because it's just somebody making comments, right? So, and it's not the view of either Afrinic or the chair or any of us here. It's somebody that made the comment. However, if the community feels that this aspect of summarizing the mailing list discussions is not helpful, then we can just remove it in our next face-to-face meeting.
Just actually last sentence. I mean, this kind of comment actually quite inappreciated for a certain group of the members in the Afrinic member community, and I would appreciate if such comment being made will be Afrinic would publish a statistic to support such comment or against such comment in terms of that, because basically you're arguing certain part of your member group being more flawed than the rest of the member group. It's just like arguing part of human society that colored people is more have higher crime rate than not colored people, stuff like that, which is not improper at all. So I would appreciate such comment, especially specific to certain member group, that would be backed by statistics. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would also appreciate that some of the comments you've made be also posted on the RPD list, so that whoever made the comment can also respond on the RPD list. It's very important. Thank you. Douglas, just before you make your comment, hopefully it's not still on the process. Let me make a comment. And perhaps to also answer Nisha's question. Yeah, or you give a follow-up. The subject of that particular mail is status of ratified policy proposals. So if you search with that subject, then you should be able to find that announcement that indicates the waiver request. Yeah, so we are beyond schedule. We are getting late now. However, Andrew and Douglas, can you ask your question and make it in 30 seconds? But before you do, I'll ask Ernest to respond to some of the questions that has been asked. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sean. In response to Nishar, so Nishar wanted to know exactly what were the difficulties that Afrinic faced regarding the implementation of the proposals that were delayed. And part of your question, Sean has answered it regarding the announcement. The announcement went to the list, so such with that subject that Sean just read out. To quickly answer that question, Nishar, we are moving our WHOIS server from the old implementation to a totally new one. And these proposals, for them to be implemented, required some significant code changes into the WHOIS server. And the fact that the current one was being decommissioned, we found it necessary to actually put these changes in the one that is being, currently worked on. So that was partly the reason why this sort of delayed, because instead of putting these changes in the old one, which was just about to be decommissioned, and repeating them into the new one would have taken quite a lot of time. Now, the other part of the problem, I think, which Sean answered, hinted at, was the implementation period as stipulated in the policy development process. The policy development process states that a proposal should be implemented by AFRINIC 6 months after the last call. Now, there are a few bottlenecks in there after last call, because after the last call, usually the board has got to meet and ratify these proposals. So if the board does not meet, or meets and does not ratify these proposals, then the 6-month period within which we're supposed to implement sort of gets, we're eating upon that time, because AFRINIC cannot actually start implementing until the board has ratified. So if a proposal is ratified in November, and the board, if a proposal is, that there's consensus on it in November and the board ratifies it in March, then already you're talking of 4 months within which AFRINIC is supposed to start on the implementation period. So, and this is one of the things that I think are up for discussion later today regarding a few enhancements to the PDP to make some of these timelines a bit more clear. But nevertheless, Nishar, just wanted to point out again to you that we are totally not in breach of the PDP. The PDP clearly has provisions for extensions if a proposal cannot be implemented within the stipulated time, and the process for that to request extensions, which we did, and requested for a new implementation date, which we are working towards too. Therefore, there's no breach whatsoever, and those issues that have been raised are the ones that perhaps cause the delays with regarding this implementation of the proposals.
Okay, thank you, Ernest. So, Douglas, please go ahead with your question, comment.
Thank you. I was thinking about who would stand to lose the most, who would suffer the most if AFRINIC, we as a community, adopted a different way of dealing with requests from certain areas within our service region. And to me, it looks like our very own members who run legitimate businesses in this area would get to suffer the most. And this would not exactly solve the problem entirely, because if fraudsters is what you're going after, they are very agile and adaptable people who will move to the next place where this is not the case. So in the end, we need to look at this if it's going to be a comprehensive enough solution. My view is the current proposal, the current what's on the table at the moment does not solve the problem, but brings in a few more problems. In the end, maybe 5 years from now, we'll have blacklisted half of the continent, a lot of it on the mainland, and not to mention even the other places that are like islands and all, they're still within our service region, so it's within our mandate to serve them. So in its current form, I think probably this should be given a lot more thought before we move it anywhere forward. Thank you.
Hi, Andrew here from Liquid again. 2 comments. Sean, you brought up that this is the first time that comments from the list are being brought to the floor and discussed, and these merely represented the views of particular people. I, for one, applaud this approach. Looking back at the mailing list, typically you have a very small group of people who are making comments and being vocal, and it is at these meetings that such comments are discussed and reviewed. Now, we sit in a situation right now where comments have come to the floor and they are generating feedback. That feedback can then be further discussed potentially turned into policy, potentially rejected. I don't think that the number of comments coming from the floor about what has been put up here should necessarily indicate that there is any problem with this process. Indeed, I think it should actually represent that this process is actually hugely advantageous. On my second comment, Ernest, you made a comment about board ratification of policy, and this potentially delaying things because the board doesn't meet to ratify things, etc. I just want to bring to the attention of this meeting that should a policy go through the policy committee and not be ratified by the board, the members do have recourse. As per the bylaws, the members have the power to, by ordinary resolution, set policy that the company acts under. So should the board not be ratifying our policies, and we feel that there is sufficient grievance about this, we do have the option to table an ordinary resolution as per the bylaws at the AGM and ratify it ourselves.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So on the first one, yeah, so thank you for the comment. So, however, the aspect where I was actually also trying to clarify is that is when you throw, when the members are throwing questions on those issues, it will be difficult for us to directly respond to them because it would have been preferred if the commenters respond to them. But, however, your comments are noted, and we'll perhaps attend to this again. The second one, we haven't said board refused to ratify. Yeah. So what we have said is there is a delay in them ratifying. So there's going to be a session where we'll discuss this, and then we'll then determine the way forward. So thank you. We are late now. I'm going to, if you can do it in 5 or 10 seconds, that will be fine.
My comment regarding the tickets processing time for the Afrinic, I would understand Afrinic need longer time to process a larger request, but Afrinic also have to keep in mind we have a 12 months period of allocation, in which means you can apply it 80% of the time, and 20% times 12 months, that's be 3 months. So the 3 months is really the longest tickets processing time Afrinic can have without affecting any business operation point of view, because you give 12 months allocation amount of address for 12 months, and you allow apply when you reach 80% of utilization. So 20% of 12 months is really the time you actually left have to before you affect any business operation, and before the business need to renumbering and consider other means of addressing to be done, so not affect the business itself. So I would understand they need to take longer time, but I would hope in the future Afrinic would limit its time within its reasonable time frame, for example 3 months, or at least there is a time limit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alan?
Hello, this is Alan Barrett. My comment is about the time that it takes to implement policies that have been passed by the community. I understand that the staff say that sometimes the board takes a long time to ratify proposals, but I'd like to point out 2 things. One is that while the proposal is still under discussion, the staff has the opportunity to make an analysis of the impact of the proposal and to provide estimates of how long it will take. And also, once the proposal is passed by the community, it seems to me that the staff could almost immediately start working on the implementation, even if the board has not yet ratified it. They'd only flip the switch when the board ratifies it, but if there's software issues and stuff, they could do it earlier. Thanks.
Alan, what if the board doesn't ratify it?
Okay, so if the board doesn't ratify it, then they wasted some effort writing some code that they never turn on. Not a big deal.
Okay, Ernest, maybe, okay, Badru.
Okay, I'll just touch the ratification process. The board meets every 2 months, and we endeavor to ratify everything in 2 months. So between that time, so it could have been that it came in earlier, we'll look at the detail. I will not talk on the operational issues. The operational is really at the operational level, the implementation. But I don't think there's a policy that has gone beyond 2 months without ratification. We can look into that, just for correction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that very useful information. Ernest is going to make a final response, then we'll close for the session.
Okay, I didn't have a particular comment, but again, back to Alan. Yeah, I would like to point out that we did not in particular say that the board delayed to ratify these proposals. So please, let's not point fingers where they are not supposed to be. So we didn't really say the board delayed, but we pointed this out as one of the way the PDP is, and the way it stipulates the timelines. Now, you have 6 months to implement a proposal from the time the time it goes to last call until from the time it goes to last call. So we said yes, there could be one potential bottleneck if there are delays in the ratification. This is not necessarily what happened this time. So we are not saying the board delayed to ratify, but yes, it might be one of the issues that might need to be addressed in the PDP, so that if that can happen, then it shouldn't affect the length or the time within which a proposal shall be implemented by the Secretariat. Thank you. Adier has a comment?
Adier?
Yes, I think the community should know the process that has been followed for this very precisely, to know what we are talking about. The policy requests the staff to send a request of waiver. That request of waiver should explain why waiver has been requested. That request has been sent to the board, explaining why this waiver is being asked. I'm talking from the operational side. The reason is this: Afrinic has engaged its software developer in developing a new WHOIS, completely new WHOIS from scratch, which they are putting effort on. So to implement this policy, they will have to stop that new WHOIS and focus on developing and implementing this in the current WHOIS. Instead of doing that, they have requested if they can spend that effort implementing the policy in the new WHOIS as they are developing it. So when they launch the new WHOIS, everything is in there instead of splitting the effort. The board has approved that waiver in order to better utilize the resource available. That new WHOIS, I think, will be released in the coming days, and will have the implementation of the policy. So the waiver has gone through that route. The implementation is not complicated, but it is a way of better utilizing the resources available in implementing the activity plan of the year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that final comment. This brings us to the close. Sorry, there's going to be another session where we can also continue this discussion. So we'll go for lunch now and come back at 2. Is that fair enough? Is 2 fair enough? We'll come back at 2 to continue the next session. Thank you very much.
Just an unrelated announcement. As you're aware, tomorrow we have the board election, and all members here that would like to participate in the election tomorrow, please go and register yourself to vote in the NOC room. That NOC room is right next to the Secretariat, and there's a big sign on it that reads member registration. And please go in there, register yourself to vote. We'll check that you're a registered member in good standing, write your name down, and tomorrow during the election we'll hand you the ballot in the election itself so that you can vote. If you have not registered, please don't say we didn't tell you. Thank you.